I think I'm just gonna stay here and stare into the maggot drawer. Hey, that's a good name for a death metal song. Stare into the maggot drawer!
We're already halfway through the 2020s, and these are my favorite death metal albums of the decade so far. Starting with Cattle Decapitation with Terrasite. Another incredible album in a seemingly unstoppable stream from this long-running California band, and with Travis once more covering the full spectrum of his vocal acrobatics on We Eat Our Young. And Scourge of the Offspring is even better, with verses that go so hard with some really fantastic drumming, but then offset by another soaring melodic goblin chorus. Love the super gnarly phlegmy vocals and riffing on the Insignificance, Aphotic Doom, Dead End Residence, Solastalgia, and the Storm Upstairs bring more serious stank-face groove, and then we close with the epic 10-plus minute Just Another Body. Personally, I like this album even more than Death Atlas.
Cattle Decapitation. Now there's a little UFO thing going on there, maybe.
I'm assuming there was already a cattle mutilation.
Then we have Cryptopsy with As Gomorrah Burns. The Canadian legends serving up their 8th full-length album since their 1994 debut, and their first in over a decade with a few banger EPs in between. Opening up on a seriously battering note with Lascivious Undivine, very much answering the question as to whether these guys have still got it. And Flayed the Swine is another one that made an instant impression with that stank-face-inducing intro riff transition. Ill Ender is another standout, bringing some stellar moments on both fronts, going hyper speed in the first half before going slow and swampy in the second, and Ollie's bass parts on The Righteous Lost alongside Flo's righteous drumming also got me making the ooh face. No duds here. I appreciate a band that even after 30 plus years is still disciplined enough to focus on quality over quantity at a lean and mean 34 minutes. Then we have Horrendous with Ontological Mysterium.
Bring me back, but I'll keep on climbing.
Easily my favorite of the current flock of modern bands worshipping the sounds of the 80s and 90s. From the almost Queen-like harmonized guitars of the intro to the even more progressive riffing and clean vocals on Chrysopia, it very much feels as if these Philly boys have been listening to a lot of Cynic and Alkaloid in addition to the usual death worship. It's a ballsy move to take such a left turn with your sound, but anyone who has been paying attention to their development over the years shouldn't be at all surprised with this one. Frankly, I think that Death would have wound up in a similar place if they had continued as well. Also recommended to fans of everything from Atheist to Obscura. Then we have Ulcerate with Stare into Death and Be Still. Another challenging record from this very challenging New Zealand band, and I'd argue that this one doubles back down on that mission statement. This cosmic black hole of a record only falls further into the bottomless misery porn pit. The overall approach here also feels more doom-laden and melancholic, and true to its title, The Lifeless Advance sets an appropriately suffocating and dreary tone devoid of any sense of hope. I'm also partial to the often aggressive Exhale the Ash and shifting tectonic plates of inversion, and then there are some driftier moments bordering on ambience, as on There Is No Horizon and Visceral Ends. But as someone who prefers a little more balance between atmosphere and engaging performances, I especially appreciate the title track for its shifting dynamics, memorable little guitar hooks, and hypnotic groove. Then we have Suffocation with hymns from the Apocrypha. Another longtime act with over 30 years under their belt making a return, and this time with new vocalist Ricky Myers, who does a fantastic job here. The dynamic songwriting on this album is some of their best to date. Perpetual Deception has more great twists and turns. I love the Carcassy melodic intro and bass work on Dim Veil of Obscurity, and Seraphim Enslavement totally blew me away. Again, not a single dud on this album either, and completely defying my expectations. It's so great to see bands that have been around for decades that could just phone something in for hardcore fans instead really put in the work and double down on their strengths to upstage bands a third their age. Little reminder here, if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to hit the like button and comment your own favorite death metal albums of the decade below. This is just my opinion as always, but then there's Moore's Principium Est with 7. One of my favorite and most underrated of the Finnish melodic death metal bands, delivering somehow one of their best albums, when I say that almost every time with them. And as much as I love the Unborn and Liberation Equals Termination, this album may actually be their best so far. The symphonic elements are more triumphant than ever, and the guitar work is absolutely insane. Every track rules, but my personal favorites are probably Lost in a Starless Aeon and In Frozen Fields. For the 100th time, it's criminal that these guys don't get as much credit as their peers, so if you haven't checked them out, please do and tell everyone you know. Then a recent one here, we have Aborted with Vault of Horrors. The Belgian kings of modern death metal return with their 12th album since their debut all the way back in 1999, and with their biggest list of guest spots to date, with someone on every track from Shadow of Intent, Flesh God Apocalypse, Angelmaker, Cryptopsy, Ingested, Engulf, Archspire, Signs of the Swarm, Of Sulfur, and Despised Icon. Plenty of other tracks to instantly get their hooks in you, like Death Cult, Insect Politics, and the Golgothan. Every song here is fantastic, with a start-to-finish flow that has an emphasis on speed and heaviness, but masterfully broken up by the melodic and atmospheric elements. Then we have Exocrine with the Hybrid Suns. This French progressive death metal band continues to be one of my modern favorites ever since I heard Ascension back in 2017. Few bands manage to be so spectacularly technical while still delivering great songs that are highly memorable. Not to mention their ability to also harness this in favor of incredible atmosphere on tracks like Dying Light and the Hybrid Suns. Really just pick a song at random and both the drumming and guitar work will twist your brain into a knot, but always to a highly satisfying and deeply infectious groove. 9 near-perfect tracks over just 35 enthralling minutes, and arguably even better than the last album. Then we have Cult of Lilith with Mara. Underrated and mostly under the radar release from this eclectic Icelandic death metal band. Think groups like the Black Dahlia Murder colliding with the more progressive and sometimes even djent mathcore song structures of Infuri, and sixth symphonic elements of Flesh God Apocalypse, and bizarre baroque and classical randomness of Igor. Such a fascinating balance of headbang-worthy aggression with more complex and rewarding compositions. Definitely one of the more unique bands on this list, and one that I hope we will hear more from soon. Then there's Cytotoxin with Nuklearth. The German brutal technical death metal band bracing for the fallout with more Chernobyl-influenced mayhem via Unique Leader Records, and I believe they have another one on the way. This band so adeptly melts the sickening elements of brutal death into a more digestible and, dare I say, catchy sound. I already loved Gamageddon, and this was an excellent follow-up. Domina sees them expanding into more melodic, proggy, and jazzy elements while still serving up the usual sickening gurgles and insane snare tone. I also like the almost Archspire-y syncopated parts on Soul Harvester, but yeah, the snarls are sick, the grooves run like water, and the sweeps are more dizzying than ever. And again, speaking of Archspire, we have Archspire with Bleed the Feature. Absolute slapper from the modern darlings of tech death, from Ollie's trademark machine gun vocals and the battering technical snare strikes to the riveting guitar hooks and killer bass moments. Everything that I loved about Relentless Mutation is once more on full display and arguably done even better. And to those who still hate on this vocal style, I just don't get you. Between the impressive level of skill involved to how much it helps the band stand out from the pack, I see nothing but benefits in what he does. Favorite tracks here: Golden Mouth of Ruin, Abandon the Linear, Bleed the Future, and Drain of Incarnation, and once more sticking to a lean runtime of just over 30 minutes. Then we have Carcass with Torn Arteries. Back to some old school Kings, Surgical Steel was fantastic, but if you ask me, this is the more interesting album overall. The fanbase was incredibly divided on this one, but with tracks like Dance of Ixtab, The Devil Rides Out, and Kelly's Meat Emporium, this was an easy pick for one of my favorite albums of 2021. There's a pretty impressive cross-section here of all of their styles from over the years: death grind, progressive, melodic death metal, and even some fun death and roll. Swan Song apologist here.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
I knew I was going to enjoy this album, but I had no idea that I wasn't going to be able to put it down. Then we have Summoning the Lich with Under the Reviled Throne. This St. Louis band continues to make a case for being a new generation's heir to the Black Dahlia Murder throne. With a very similar approach to melodic death metal from the riffs to vocals, they managed to outdo that very band's comeback in the same year. And frankly, I am more than okay with that. I think that even Trevor would have loved to see it. Packed with hooks and fantasy imagery, this is yet another list topper for me in a year overflowing with great death metal releases. United in Chaos was already an impressive debut, but this sophomore effort shows signs of a band just getting started. Then there's Beneath the Massacre with Fearmonger. Another returning act absolutely defying expectations with arguably their best album. The perfect fusion of dizzying technicality and fiercely infectious hooks takes all the band's best qualities and amplifies them to their absolute peak. I'm in awe of just how much their songwriting skills had improved on this one. 10 battering tracks that will absolutely body you. I considered including Dying Fetus on this list, but this does everything they have done better so far this decade, if you ask me. The guitar work and drumming will absolutely break your brain, but never at the sacrifice of memorable songs. Then there's Blood Incantation with Absolute Elsewhere. The Colorado death metal band back again with possibly their most forward-thinking record to date in a discography dedicated to innovation. 2 lengthy compositions broken up into 6 tracks with incredible pacing and something new and exciting to offer every minute or so, including a collab with Tangerine Dream.
They come from outer space.
Why not?
Also getting vibes of everything from Opeth and Ulver to Pink Floyd on the Message Tablet 2. I know some people really were divided on this one, but I think it's just such a wonderful, continuous peeling back and revealing of new layers that never got boring for me. Then there's Soreption with Jord. Another super technical progressive death metal album from this Swedish band to make some waves when it dropped. Speaking of which, is it actually pronounced Jord? Anyways, if you love infectiously syncopated start-stop grooves and vocals a la Archspire again, you are going to love this album. It's yet another to add to the list of highly proficient musicians who also understand that at the end of the day, no amount of wankery can replace memorable songwriting. Yes, it's the tech death musician's wet dream, but again, like Beneath the Massacre, always in service of fun above all else. Forget headbanging, I can't listen to this without my entire body moving. Then there's Allegaeon with Damnum. Another one to make my top albums of the year list in 2022 from this popular Colorado progressive death metal band formed in the 2000s. Highly engaging songwriting, enthralling riffage, and incredible dynamics make tracks like Into Embers absolutely breathtaking, not to mention the fun little detours into other styles like the Spanish guitar of To Carry My Grief Through Torpor and Silence, and absolutely stunning piano on Blight, and Called Home feels like a straight up love letter to Opeth. Speaking of which, Riley's clean vocals sound better than ever, and even the death growls, which I previously called one note in comparison to the complex instrumentation, sound like they were taking some more dynamic strides, as with the Dopamine Void. Shame that it'll be Riley's last ride, but he goes out on what I'd say is their most impressive album to date.
Allegaeon. Allegaeon. Now, a lot of these might be names of demons.
And speaking of Opeth, we have Opeth with The Last Will and Testament. The Legends back with their first to feature death growls since 2008's Watershed. And while I wouldn't call this a full return to Blackwater Park, I think that we got in many ways is better. As I said as it came out, this perfectly fuses the more retro prog and classic rock elements of the last few albums with the heavy ones we know and love. Not to mention, pretty interesting to get Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull and Joey Tempest of Europe guesting. I'm at the age where more and more it's like you want to relive the glory days, but you realize you can't. But I do think that this signals another interesting and exciting moment for the band that has potential to spark a lot of feels, both old and new. And I think that's fitting to the variety of musical decades that inspire the writing of this album. Then we have the Halo Effect with Days of the Lost. Funny that as a longtime fan of both In Flames and more so Dark Tranquillity, neither of those bands made this list, but this melodic death metal supergroup made up of past and present members of both absolutely did. If you ask me, the combo is easily better than anything that either band has done in years, and at least as good as the former's Atoma. It's the perfect mix of death metal headbanging with catchy melodies, and the hooks here seem to be without end. Every track is single-worthy, and for the Trivium fans out there, Matt Heafy makes a guest appearance on Last of Our Kind. Powerful stuff that takes me back to the glory days of blasting Damage Done and Colony in my high school years. Nice to have a supergroup that is actually greater than the sum of its parts. And then this list is in no particular order, but I'm going to end on another more recent one in Job for a Cowboy with Moon Healer. Lots of return acts on this list, and after a decade, this Arizona band back after a long time away and have made the wait well worth it. This album is like a cross between Rivers of Nile, Inanimate Existence, and the Black Dahlia Murder, really ripping into that guitar with some of those bass sections too, just absolute insanity. Notably, Naveen Kopervice of Entheos and formerly Animals as leaders drums on this album, making for another welcome addition, and of course Johnny still killing it on the vocals. I always say that comeback albums are extra hard, as with every year away the expectations only get higher and higher, but this exceeded all of them once more. Y'all check out this playlist for more of my favorite death metal out there, and also stay tuned, I'm hoping to do some of these for other genres as well, so please do subscribe. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.